Throughout history, there have been times when fear combined with strong beliefs have led to huge overreactions. The Salem witch trials and everything that happened with it is a strong example of this. Many innocent people were imprisoned and killed. Uniquely, some of the most powerful people in this story were teenage girls, some even younger. In this video, we'll be taking a closer look at the lives of the girl accusers. What were their lives like before? What part did they play in the trials? And what happened to them afterwards? It's important to give context to the world the girls were living in. Salem Village in 1692 was a Puritan community. It was a troubled place with religious and political divisions. It was a very tough place to live, and it was very strict. There was also ongoing violence with the Native Americans, and many residents had fled their homes and relocated to Salem from fear. The Puritans viewed any people who were not Christian with fear and mistrust. Witchcraft was something many believed in, and it was a crime punishable with death. It's fair to say it would have been a tense place to grow up. Let's take a closer look at some of the stories of the girls involved, starting with Abigail Williams, aged 12, and Betty Parris, aged 9. These two girls were living in Salem Village and in the same house. The house where the madness of the Salem witch trials began. They lived with Betty's father and Abigail's uncle, Reverend Samuel Parris, who was the very serious village minister. The role of minister at these times was hugely important. He had massive influence. His long sermons in a cold church tended to be filled with heavy talk of sin and damnation. And if he talked this way at church, he probably did it at home too. It's been suggested that to pass the boredom one January night, the two girls were using a Venus glass to get clues about their future husbands. A Venus glass would typically be made of glass and is associated with folk magic. Supposedly, they saw what looked like a coffin in the glass, and they were very shaken up. Any kind of fortune-telling was not allowed. They may well have believed that by doing something forbidden, they opened the door to the devil. Abigail and Betty were the first girls to show strange behaviour and claim they had been bewitched. They were screaming, having spasms, and they were making no sense. This behaviour obviously attracted attention, and those around them were of course very concerned. A doctor, seeing no physical problem, suggested the girls' behaviour could be down to witchcraft. And while being questioned about what had happened, they said invisible forces were causing them harm. They accused 3 women, including Tituba, a slave working in the house they were living in. And it seems many around them believed their story. As the situation in the village developed, the girls played different roles in what happened. Betty's symptoms seemed to go away, and she was sent to live with family, and she played no further part in the story. She did return to the village after everything had calmed down. She would in time marry and have children, but she would never comment on the trials publicly. She eventually died in her 70s. Sadly, Abigail was not sent away, and who knows how things may have been different if she had. But she remained, and her behaviour was certainly dramatic, and got more extreme over time. In front of certain people in positions of power, she would run around acting like a bird. She shouted out in church and was quick to accuse more and more people. Sat front row in the investigations with other afflicted girls, she would point her finger at people and suddenly fall down screaming and saying she could see spectres. A spectre was the ghost form of the accused witch who could invisibly to everyone else attack the girls. In court, she as well as the other girls confidently accused fellow villagers, and despite her youth, she played a huge role in the trials. Her behaviour was obviously shocking to those who witnessed it, and it was considered for a time valid evidence, and as a result of her words, many were imprisoned and some put to death. Some people even tried to talk to her privately and make her see that people could be killed based on her words. Maybe she didn't emotionally understand the significance, or maybe she truly believed it, but her story didn't change and her finger kept pointing. What happened to Abigail after the trials is a bit of a mystery. It's possible she was sent away as the village tried to recover from the horror of what had happened. She may have married and therefore changed her name, or possibly she died. But it seems she pretty much disappeared from the records. Certainly though, her name would live on. Abigail was one of the most important characters in the play The Crucible. The character in the play was older than the real Abigail had been, and it was suggested for the play that jealousy had been a large motivation for her behaviour. Mary Warren, aged about 18. Mary was a servant living in the house of John and Elizabeth Proctor. She was one of the older, supposedly afflicted girls, being in her late teens. Like other girls in the village, she started behaving strangely, having fits, and started accusing people of witchcraft. While many were somewhat quick to believe the girls, Mary's master Proctor did not believe her, and seemingly, by his own words, he inflicted violence on Mary. It's said that either through threats or actual violence, that Mary would temporarily change her behaviour. Proctor openly claimed he had cured her of the afflictions by thrashing the devil out of her. Mary is particularly interesting in these events, as her story for a time changed. A statement was read out in court, saying she was free from the devil. She said that she had lied and the other girls were lying too. This created a very strong reaction from the girls who were ever present in the court. They quickly turned on Mary, now accusing her of being a witch. I can only imagine the anxiety Mary was feeling in this moment. She had a master who didn't believe her, and was possibly violently forcing her to say she was lying. She had the pressure of speaking publicly at trials that was seeing people imprisoned, and now she had the girls say she was guilty herself. It's not surprising in some ways that Mary broke down and returned to the side of the afflicted girls. She even accused her master, John Proctor, and this played a part in his eventual execution. She also accused his wife, Elizabeth, who was imprisoned. Mary herself was also briefly jailed. After her changing stories, she was no longer seen as a credible witness. There is virtually nothing said about Mary or her life after. She seemed to disappear from the records. Possibly she left the village, or married, or even died. Her part in the whole thing really is a mystery. Some have seen her actions as being caught up in the hysteria, and that she was a victim of peer pressure. Anne Putnam Jr., about 12 years old. Anne came from a powerful family in the village. She was a very important person in the trials, as she accused more people than any other girl. Like some of the other girls in the village, she started acting strangely, having fits and screaming. She claimed she was being hurt by spectres. One of the women she accused was an old woman called Martha Corey. When Martha was brought to meet with Anne, her symptoms got worse, and she claimed she could see a bird sucking Martha's finger. When a servant, Mercy Lewis, working in the house, backed up Anne's story, Martha was in a real mess. One of the hardest things to understand is what motivated the girls to say what they did. Was it trauma or wanting attention? Or, as it's been suggested in Anne's case, that she may have been influenced by her family. Her father was heavily involved in the trials, stirring things up behind the scenes. Many of the people accused were people he had grudges with. As an important and influential member of the community, his voice carried much weight. It seems hard to believe that he was not heavily influencing his daughter and directing her in how to behave and what to say. But what was his endgame plan? Was he going to have every person in the village who had ever annoyed him named as a witch for revenge? It would be fascinating to know what kind of conversations he had with Anne in private. In public, she played the part very well. She was considered very convincing. Her behaviour in court was dramatic. Like the other girls, with all eyes on her, she was falling down and screaming and telling all kinds of stories of being hurt by the accused spectres. One thing I always wonder is, why did no one question the decision to put the girls into the courthouse? I guess the problem was their reactions were considered valid evidence. But why would any parent or reasonable adult want a child to be put in a position where they are being hurt? And for that matter, why would the girls want to be in a place where they could come to harm? It seems they were all too happy to be front row for all the drama. I guess in the hysteria, the adults forgot that they're meant to be protecting the children. If it were me feeling the way they claimed they felt, I would have run a mile. After the trials, the Putnams remained in the village, but their reputation was damaged due to the heavy involvement from the family. As she was a child, I can look at Anne's actions with a certain level of forgiveness. But her father, Thomas, is clearly one of the real villains of the story. He died 6 years after the trials ended and never faced any legal consequence for the part he played. But what about Anne? Her dramatic part in the story was not over. In 1706, in her mid-20s, she publicly apologised and said she regretted the way she had behaved. She is, I believe, the only girl to make an apology. She stood in church and said she wanted forgiveness for accusing innocent people. She said at the time she truly believed what she said, but she could now see that she had acted wrongly. These are her words. "I was a chief instrument of accusing of several persons of a grievous crime. I did it ignorantly, being deluded by Satan. I desire to lie in the dust and to be humbled for it. In that I was the cause, with others, of so sad a calamity to them and their families." This apology was highly important for the memory of those who were accused and killed. And I think Anne was brave to speak up as she did. Possibly it was something she could not move on from. But by this time in her life, her parents were dead, and as the eldest of her siblings, she had responsibilities that probably made her grow up fast. Anne, it seems, never married and remained in Salem Village until her death when she was about 36. Who would have thought that the behaviour of a group of girls from hundreds of years ago would be something remembered now? Could these girls have ever thought about the knock-on effects of their behaviour, both for others and themselves? I'm sure that in the dark, in their beds, many would have thought long and hard about the part they played. But the past can't be changed. I just hope that they, as well as anyone else involved, were able to find some sort of peace.